Alright, video 100! So in this video I'm going to cover everything that you can do with Project for the Web as of today, as of the end of 2022. We had a November update and I'm going to incorporate that into the video as well. This is going to be a lengthy video because we have something to celebrate, right? So let's jump right into Project Home. Alright. Let's start from the basics. So Project for the Web is a cloud-based application. That means you can browse to it using any browser that you'd like. I'm using Chrome right now, but you can also use Edge or Safari or just about any browser that you would normally use in the organization. I tend to go to project.microsoft.com. That is the easiest way to find Project for the Web, and it's also the location that's called Project Home. From this location, you can either find roadmaps or projects that come from other applications, such as Project Online. There's a link down below that navigates to your default Project Online environment, if you have one, because Project for the Web does not require you to have Project Online. It is actually a completely separate application, but uses the same licensing structure. So you have a P1, P3, and P5 license, and Project for the Web is also accessible for Office 365 users. That said, let's create a first project. Now, recently there have been a couple of updates to the Create menu. We used to have the option to create a roadmap or a blank project, but recently we also are treated with default templates. Now these templates don't actually fit any real organizational need, but they are an interesting starting position for you as a first-time user of Project for the Web, or maybe that you can tweak your project management template, for instance, and tweak it in such a way that is useful for you to create your own templates with. Creating templates from Project for the Web is not available yet. There is a nifty trick that I will do later in this video where you can take a project and copy that project for future use. So apart from a blank project, a roadmap, we can also import a project from Microsoft Project, which is a very useful tool if you're a first-time user of Project for the Web and still use Microsoft Project to create your schedules. You'll be prompted with a warning message, import from Project Desktop. This will create a Project for the Web schedule that is separate from your Project Desktop project. So that means there's no synchronization. And please note that some Project Desktop features can't be imported into Project for the Web. Now, some features are quite extensive and you might want to learn more if you don't already know what the limitations of the current import from Project Desktop is. From the website you can see which features are not imported from Project Desktop. The main features that I would love to get into Project for the Web in the near future are baselines, constraints, deadlines, inactive tasks, resources, recurring project tasks, and of course the dependency links start to start, finish to finish, start to finish. But enough complaining on what it does not feature at the moment, because Microsoft is working on improving Project for the Web to include more features, and I'm sure that Microsoft is reading through these lists and looking at the feature request list. And keep an eye out for my feature release videos, because I do them close to every month, giving you an insight on what has changed. Let's go back to Project for the Web and let's choose an MPP file. And we're going to look at the different ways on creating a project in the start of this video, because there's multiple ways of looking at creating a new project. And this one, because we already have it open, is going to be our first one. So let's choose an MPP file. And for this, I'm going to go to TPC. I'm going to go to post number 200. I already have a file open here, and this is the commercial construction project that is a default template from Microsoft Project. One that, if you have paid close attention, you would also be able to see in in our basic templates. And that is because Microsoft chose the current templates that were in Microsoft Project already, and they altered them to fit Project for the Web. So commercial construction, we're going to click on this next, but let's go for import project first. So choose a file, and I'm probably going to be prompted that I need to close the file before I can upload it. So let's see. No. Oh, that is nice. So I can actually import while I still have the file open. Of course, we need to save something before it publishes here as well, but let's have a look. So it imported correctly, but there are 32 resources that were not imported. They are removed. And there is one link that was not supported. A finish to start dependency is currently the only version of dependencies that we do allow in Project for the Web. But other than that, everything has been included. So let's have a look. It is a big schedule. There used to be a limitation of 500 tasks within Project for the Web. That has recently been increased to, I believe, 10,000 rows, but I'll verify that before I make any claims on that. So here we have the grid view. We have the board view with everything that is not started, up next, in progress, or done. We have our timeline, and the timeline can zoom out to look at a couple of months, and that would be lovely if we had a go-to task, go-to date. Here we go. So here we have our schedule, our Gantt chart, and we also have charts, and we have something new that's called people. And currently there's no people in here, so we're going to have a look at the people tab later on in this video, where we're going to do a deep dive, because as you might have known, this is a new tab that has been recently added in the November update. So this is our first way of introducing a project inside Project for the Web. Now we can also start a blank project, and that's going to be the most boring one, right? It has an untitled project name. We can change the project name, and this part normally takes a little time to load. I don't know what is happening in the backend, but there's something happening. So we have me as project manager. We have a start date. Let's have that on a nice Monday instead, 12th of the 12th. Lovely. All right. So untitled project, project video 100, and I'm going to have a number 2 after that, because this is the second project that we're going to create. If you have an alternative calendar, you can use that. We'll take a deep dive on the calendars later on in this video as well, as we move closer to our resources, because calendars have a close relation to resources. So let's click on close, and we can start populating our project with a summary, a task, task 2, and a milestone, and we can populate that with well, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, and 0 weeks. And selecting all of these, we can right click and we can set a dependency. Because currently Project for the Web only allows a finish to start dependency, that is the only thing that will happen here. If we look at the timeline once again, we see that this task, the first task, needs to finish before the second one can start, and so on. So let's go back to the grid. We can select all of these tasks again, and we can right click and make them a subtask of our summary. That means that the summary now has a duration of 25 days because it's a summary of these 5 weeks. Currently, it's not assigned to anyone. Assigning someone can be done on 2 ways. Once again, resources is coming up. We have a quick look, and we have an add columns. This was the second way of creating a new project. Let's go back to our project home, and let's create the third one, where I am going to use the construction template from within Project for the Web. So commercial construction, and here you see that it has already done something with the board view that wasn't in the original template. So they did upgrade the project template. Use template. here we go. It also includes these. So a checklist. That's interesting. So let's have a look. What's inside the checklist? 2 values, submit bond documents and submit insurance documents. Very nice. And if I click on one of them, you get that nice little 50% done visualization. Very cool. So this is going to be our third way of creating a project within Project for the Web. Project 100/2 or /3 because this is the third way. And let's see what is inside that wasn't in the original. We have our board view, general conditions, long lead procurement, and let's change the color for that because that is something that we can do with Project for the Web, which I absolutely love. Can we also move this one? Yes, we can. Absolutely. And we can easily create a task within a board view as well. So we have our timeline, and that looks similar to the one that we saw on the original template. We have charts with now a nice division across buckets that we didn't have in the original. So these are the 3 ways of creating a project within Project Home. So we have a new project, we have a blank project, we have a template project, and we have the import project option. But Project for the Web is created with a Dataverse backend. That basically means that we have further extensibility options. One of them was recently presented with my video, Power PPM Loves Project for the Web. I'm going to briefly look at that once again, where we have this option of creating an app. And here we have our Power PPM solution created by Projectum. And in it, we have options to look at portfolios, programs, projects. And if we open up projects, we can see all the projects that are in our default environment. And because this is a separate tenant, I don't see the projects that I created before, but we can create a new project from here, and we can give it a name, project 104. And we can add more information here. We can link it up to a program, we can link it up to a portfolio, but let's just click on save for now. And once that save is completed, we can navigate to the schedule, and while opening schedule, you'll be presented with a Project for the Web instance. So sadly, it's not loading right now, but luckily I have another alternative to show you, and that is the Project for the Web Accelerator. Also presented during one of the previous videos. Project for the Web Accelerator is a free model-driven Power App that you can grab from GitHub. Link is in the description. And once you've downloaded that and you go to apps, you'll be presented with project. And this is the same project that you get without the Project Accelerator, but with added features. Let's have a look. And here we have a home page where we see data, and we have project requests, we have programs, and we have projects. And if I navigate to projects, I can start populating a new project. And this is going to be project, and this is going to be project 5, I believe. While thinking of, and while updating this, I thought of a 6th method to add a new project to Project Home. We'll get to there. We'll get there in a second. So here we have tasks, and from here there's a pop-up that will show up, and I'm going to allow that. And that is needed because we have authentication of the Project for the Web functionality, and we can have another look. Task grid is taking longer time to load. If it does not load, follow the steps in some documentation URL. And let's refresh the page to see if that helps. And let's navigate back to tasks. And there we go. There we have our 5th way of creating a new task, a new project. And again, summary 1, task 1, task 2, milestone. And it works just like it did in the previous example. It's just Project for the Web, only from a model-driven Power App visualization of the tool. So here we go, and we have access to the board, we have access to timeline, we have access to charts and people, and we have a business case, financials, resources, risks, issues, changes, status. Very nice and completely free to download. And the Project Accelerator is an example of what can be done with a model-driven Power App. Of course, the Power PPM instance has a lot more to offer and is continuously worked on through 4-wave cadences of upgrades from Projectum. And you can get Power PPM through Projectum directly or one of our myriad partners around the world. So about that sixth way. Let me show you how Project Home looks. So here we have 1, 2, 3. Our fourth one was in the Power PPM, and then the fifth one. So what is the sixth one of adding a project to Project Home? Well, we can navigate to Teams. And from Teams we can start creating a new team, and we can call that team from scratch, and it's going to be private team, and it's going to be post 100 number 6. Are we allowed to add a number? I have no idea. Let's create that one. Nice work. Okay, so we are allowed to use the pound sign. So let's add Miriam, my wife, to the project. And because she's part of this team, that also means that we have her in the Microsoft 365 group. Keep that in mind, because that's coming up later as well when we are looking at the resources once again. So plus sign, and let's create a project. And there's a lot that you can do with projects, and just be aware that here is that Microsoft project. So let's add that to this team, and let's add that to create a new project. If you have a project already available within your Microsoft 365 group, the one that we just created with the post 100 number 6, then you would see the option to create to add the already present project. But let's create a new project, and let's call this the post 100 numero 6, and we can post to the channel. Let's do that for this example. And here we have that post, and we can navigate to it, and here we're creating your project. Please wait. Well, we can wait for that just a moment, and we can already refresh the home page here, and here we see that project popping up. So it is already created. Now, I really like the integration with Microsoft Teams, because Microsoft Teams is really becoming the hub for everyone that's working in a Microsoft ecosystem. Let's add one single task here and a milestone. I'm not getting lazy, I'm efficient. So let's keep it like this. Let's add a dependency, and here we have those 5 options once again. Now there is something upcoming, and it has been presented in October. I did not have the option yet, but if you are in America, you probably already have this available to you, where there is an option to add a timeline. Now that timeline will grab your Microsoft Planner plan and create a project instance of it. So that is a very nice upgrade, where you can start planning with Planner, something that most organizations have within a Teams context. And if there's more value that you need to add, more granularity, more detail, more project scheduling power, then you can upgrade that plan to a project for the web schedule. Very nice. So these are at the moment the ways of creating a new project schedule within Project Home or outside using the Dataverse or Microsoft Teams connections. So very powerful, a lot of methods to get started with a project for the web schedule. All right, thanks for sticking around so far. with creating a project for the web schedule from multiple different angles. Now, you might also seen that here we have a PWA project, here we have a normal project, and project number 5 was created through the Project Accelerator environment, and so it has a different source. Very important to know that you have the option to have different sources, and still from a project home you have access to all of them. Now let's have a deep dive and see what we can do with our project once we have it created. So here we have that lazy project that I just created. We can add a couple of things here. So summary, you've already seen me do this. Task 3, milestone. And we can make these dependent on each other. We also can remove dependencies. We have the option to complete a task, delete a task, and copy a task and cut a task. So what happens when we copy a task? Do we have the option to paste tasks? Yes, we do. So that is very nice. So let's make this milestone task 4 and milestone 3, because we already have a second milestone here, and we can link them all together. And once again, currently we only have one dependency type, and as you can see, it already pre-populates the duration. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 0 days, right? So these are all linked to each other. We can even make them part of the summary, and we can link this milestone together with that milestone using the control key and adding a dependency once again. And if we look at the timeline now, we see that it has a nice waterfall kind of flow to it. Great. Let's have a look at the details that we see here. So we have a column called Quick Look. What does the Quick Look do? It has a couple of functions. One of them is that if you add a checklist, item 1, item 2, these are just like the checklist items within Planner. It's the same functionality. And if you click on that mark here, you'll see that it has progress in it. Now keep in mind, these checklists are not activities. These are not tasks. You don't have the option to assign resources to these checkpoints. But you do have the option to upgrade this to a task. So let's do that right now. And you see that it will populate a new task underneath the task that was part of that checklist. Now, as you've seen, here is that Quick Look with one checkpoints added, item 3 and item 4. It does update the progress bar, so to say, on the checklist. So this is one of the things that you can see within the Quick Look. Another thing is adding a note. Here is a note. And if you add that, there's a new value here. It doesn't give you a brief look at what the note is. That would be a lovely addition, but you have the option to click on it and we'll open the side pane to show you that there is a note. So a third thing that you can see within the Quick Look is that you have the option to add attachments. So adding attachments can be done from a computer, from Teams files, and adding a link to a URL. Now be aware, I opened up post number 100 numero 6 explicitly. And why did I do that? Because that gave me the option to add things from my computer and from team files. Without adding to a Microsoft 365 group, you don't have a storage option. So project does not have some place to store documents. So you only have the option to add a link. Make sure that you have either started a project from Microsoft Teams or that you added a team at a later instance, so that you have these two options as well. So let's add something from my computer. Let's add the project for the Web Accelerator report, and adding that now makes the Quick Look have a attachment in there as well. Our lovely Clippy is still here with us. So that is the 3 things that you currently have available from the quick look option. Now, assign 2 is regarding resources. Be aware, this is already a project that is part of a Microsoft 365 group, the one that I created while I created a Microsoft Teams environment. So Miriam is already in this team together with me. I can also add additional resources as long as they are part of the organization. I'm not going to do that right now because we're going for a deep dive about resources later in this video. But let's move onwards. Duration is in work days. That means that it does not take into account weekends or non-working days that you set in your calendar. Adding a column can be done through here. Adding a column for percentage complete, for instance. Let's just add everything and let's have a talk about everything that we see here. There's no option to add everything in one go. Thankfully, Microsoft does remember what you had added previously. And there's more columns than there used to be at the beginning of Project for the Web, such as priority is a new value that you can add. You have urgency, important, low importance. Let's say that the first task is very important, because if we don't finish the first task, nothing gets finished, right? So we have an outline number, we have a start and a finish date. Let's keep them next to each other. And in Microsoft Project, you used to have work and remaining work and completed work. In Project for the Web, this is called effort. So we have an amount of effort that we need to perform in these 12 days. As soon as we set effort completed, such as, well, for instance, let's say we're halfway through, the effort remaining is being recalculated, as well as the percentage complete. The percentage complete has a nice visualization that we're 50% done. We can also change this here, and we can say that we're at 75%, and that will also update the effort completed and the effort remaining. If we upgrade this manually, let's see what happens. The total amount of work in effort, sorry, I need to do this correct. The total amount of effort is increased by another 10. Then we have the dependency columns. We have depends and dependent on. So this is nice because we used to have predecessors and successors. In Project for the Web, it's called dependent and depends on. So here we have dependents 3. So 3 is the milestone. And that's correct because we had this lineage, but we added item 2. So item 2 also depends, let's say, what we do. Let's add no, task 1. And here you see that as soon as I had this as dependent, depends on, dependent on 2, and I think I did it the incorrect way. Yeah, so here you have a strange lineage. There is no option for me to double click here and change this. So I go back to the grid, I'll remove this dependency, and it automatically removes that one as well. And I'll go old school, selecting all 3 of them and removing the dependencies, and I'll add them once again. Add dependencies, and now I'm sure that 2, 3, this one depends on item 1 to be complete. And now if I go back to the timeline, you have that nice waterfall again. Good. So we have buckets as well, and this is a agile feature that we know from Planner. We can look at the board view and have our bucket here, which we can call, let's call them things to do, and doing now, and completing or unit testing. Now I really would have loved to have an option here to add, okay, I can only have 4 items here, but maybe that is something that is coming up as well. I like what Nanat has recently shared, where you have a separate bucket for milestones. And we'll add that here. Oh, why? So milestone, milestone, and milestone. And then we'll have item 1 doing now, item 4 unit testing, and as I've already presented, you have the option to add color coordination within the board view. So let's go back to grid. From grid, let's see what we have remaining. So here you see that the buckets now have a nice name instead of bucket 1. Moving to the right, we have something called labels, also something we're familiar with using Planner. Labels are available to us in Project Photo Web as well. We have roughly 26 colors that we can use. If I have pink here and I have the pen icon, I can edit the label and say this is a pink label, something like that, and it changes that label. Be aware that this is a local change. This does not change the color pink for the rest of all our projects. So if we go back to our project home and we go to project number 3 and we open up the label here, the label, if we open up the label here, pink is still pink here. So that is not overarching into an enterprise kind of scenario. So let's head back to, and here you see that view that you had for this single project is retained for you. That is a personal kind of setting. So other people still have the default setting or the default visual of your project. So be aware, you can change the labels here. Super blue, and once you have changed that, things start to freeze up. But here we have super blue, and you have, this is a pink label and this is super blue. And if you add more labels, you'll see that there's 2 labels in here. Now, why is that interesting to have these labels? You have a filter option here, and that filter option gives you the option to select everything that is in the pink label, for instance, or is super blue. So that is an easy way to filter your values. We also have the option to look at critical path. Nothing is on the critical path. Well, everything is actually. We have an option to look at all the urgent tasks, and we can have a look at a specific bucket that we have here. And be aware that it is a multiple select option. You want to deselect them by clicking here, or you want to select the clear all option. Be aware that any selection that you make has a number that is going to increase as you go about, and gives you a nice overview of all the filters that you currently have active in your view. So those are all the out-of-the-box fields in Project Photo Web, but we also have an option to add new fields. Now, these new fields can be done in a different kind. These kinds of fields can be set up with different types in mind. So we have a text, we have date, we have number, we have yes and no, and we have a choice option. Of course, the choice option is the most interesting to have a look at, and we can add we can have risk assessment, and we can cite high risk, low risk, and no risk. And be aware that we also have this little bucket to add color to those fields. So, and these are not fields, of course, these are values. And we can add additional choices. By default, you have 3 available, and let's create that. So while I create that, I have this available to me and have a option to add high risk values or low risk values or even no risk values. This also pops up into the filters that we have. Risk assessment is now an extra option that you have available for your filters. Very nice. Adding additional fields such as a date is also interesting. Here you can set your own deadline date. And I hope in the future that we have a deadline native in Project for the Web, and that we have calculation options as well, so that we can say, okay, well, the deadline is date X and it is close to the finish date, so there should be a warning of a high risk kind of situation. That is something that I would love to see in the future, and I hope you agree. If you do, leave it in the show notes so that I know that this is also a feature that you would be very happy to see in Project for the Web in the future. So let's have another look at the task, the types. Text is normal, number is normal. Let's have a look at the yes and no fields. Escalated, and let's create that. And if we have escalated, then this is an urgent, high-risk task that isn't completed yet, and we're close. Well, we're not too close to the deadline, but let's escalate it nonetheless. Escalation, once again, is also something that is now available for me to filter on. Very nice. All right, so now we have a good overview of what we can do within the grid. Let's have a look at a couple of more advanced options that we have available. So one of the things that was added in Timeline is that we have an option to visualize the critical path. Now, this is currently only something that we can do from the Timeline view, but it showcases all the values that are in a critical path. Of course, if we start adding tasks here, non-critical path, and I'll do the spelling check later, we have the option to add these as next to each other, and I can prolong this and I can prolong that as well. And if we show the critical path, everything that is now with a red bar is part of that critical path, and these two tasks are not. We have the option to filter critical path values from the grid view, but there's no highlighting of that critical path in here. So here we see everything that is part of the critical path is shown, and these two tasks that we just added are not in the critical path. So going back to the timeline, I like the timeline that it has an option to show you the tasks and the resources that are in there, but it does not have the option to add additional fields or columns like you used to have in Microsoft Project. That is something that it currently lacks. We have an option to have the zoom in here. Zoom currently has a zoom on 1 year basis, I believe that it is. It has a go to option, as we've seen already. We can have a look at the charts. We see that the charts now has more values, more color. And from the timeline, we also have the option to export the timeline to a PDF. Now, this will create a PDF that is available right from the download folder, and it showcases what you have at the moment. It shows you when it was exported, it shows you the name of the project and what you have assigned in here with a completed view with a start and finish and a number of pages. Now, be aware this is not configurable at the moment. That means that what you see is what you get, and quite literally what you see is what you get. So that means that if I zoom in, and I zoom in extensively, if I look at this part of the timeline now and I do another export, I get a completely different view of that project. See that? Yeah, I all of a sudden have 3 pages to fill, and the third page is even useless. Now, you might also be familiar with this kind of struggle. You might have seen that in Microsoft Project as well. I did a webinar extensively explaining the project printing functionality just to look at this kind of scenario. So from the timeline view, you have also the option to export to Excel. You have the copy project and team files option, as well as the project details. That is available across the different locations that you're navigating through. But the copy, export timeline to PDF is only available in timeline, and the critical path visualization is also only available from the timeline view. So remember that I had this project in a Microsoft Teams scenario. Have a look. I created that in Microsoft Teams, but I added all kinds of features in the Project Home environment, and it is populated in here as well. So I can update here just as I can update anywhere within the tool. I can add a label, adding this as the pink label and super blue. Everything that I've done inside Teams, inside Project for the Web, is also available straight from the Microsoft Teams environment. Two things that you have access to from the Microsoft Teams files is that from the Microsoft Teams environment is that you can have direct access to that attachment. Now that attachment is of course in files, but it is not in general. If you go to documents, here you see that Project for the Web Accelerator report that we added previously. We can also add additional files through this Teams environment directly. So for instance, add another attachment, and we can add it from our computer, and we can add the Gantt visualization that we had. So we can close this one here, and we can go back to files, and under documents you'll see that post 100 numero 6 is also available from here. Something to be aware of, this is something that is across channels, because it's not inside one single channel, it is in the Microsoft 365 group. Be aware, there is no way to create a channel specific Project for the Web project. So go back to the post. There's an additional thing that you can do with this Microsoft Teams interface. You can start a conversation with a user. Now, this is going to be the first time that we're going to add a user, and I'm going to add Miriam, my wife, to this task. So doing that, I can select the task and I can click on the eye icon, and I can see, okay, well, this is assigned to Miriam, and I can see that it is almost complete, and I have an effort and an effort remaining with a total amount of hours is 50. It's high risk and it's escalated, and I want to know the latest status of this activity. How do I do that? I have the option to add a conversation. Open a conversation tab is only available through the Microsoft Teams interface, because there is where our chats lie, right? So let's have a look at Miriam. How is this task progressing? And if I click on go, I have my task and I have a card going directly into that task. So where did that chat land? That chat landed in the posts. So here you see that if Miriam is a part of this group, and she is, she will be able to see this task in her chat, and she can directly go there and click on that chat, and she can go into the task. Now the details of this task is opened up in the main page, giving all the details that I need, including attachment, including dependencies, including a start and a finish, and the duration and the urgency and the items that we've done or not done. And I can even update, complete it. Well, let's say that she has done an additional 10 hours and we still have 10 hours remaining. The risk is lowered, and it's no longer needed to escalate, but the deadline is now sooner than we had previously. So she's updated this, and she can go into the chat, which was already open. She can close this and show that here. There's an option to get that into a separate window as well, linking it to the right side. It makes a lot of sense. So at Erik, oh yeah, because I am Erik, of course. So I've updated the task love Miriam. And of course, this was something that she would have messaged, but here we have added a task conversation. And as you can see, we've added a fourth option. 1, 2, 3. We've added a fourth option in our quick look. So getting back to the schedule, there's 3 things that I wanted to look into before we jump into resources in more detail. So number 1 is the export to Excel option. If we click on the export to Excel, it opens up it downloads a new Excel file, and if I open that up, it will contain all the values that we see on screen now. It has the 10 tasks that we have. It has all the custom and non-custom values or columns that you have. We can move to the right and see that there's even color coordination that wasn't there previously, so that's good. Here's a node. This is pink, and it also tells you the labels and which sprint we're in. Hold on, sprint. That is something newly added to Project for the Web, and that it can be found in the board view. So in the board view, we have the normal board columns that we can add, which are called buckets, but there's an additional view available. We can look at that through the group by bucket. And if we click on that, there is an assign to, a progress, a finish date, a labels, priority, and a new option called sprint. Now, if we open up sprint, this has been added quite recently and is an alternative to a grid view and a timeline view. This is more focused on an agile way of working. Normal sprint size is a month for Project for the Web, and if I click on add a new sprint, we can call this sprint 1, and this should be on January, the 1st of January, and this should finish at the end of January, and I click on add sprint. Now, there's a couple of kinks in this new view or new option within Project for the Web, and that is that if you have a sprint that is overlapping, so let's say this starts halfway through January and it ends halfway in February, that is a different time size of the default sprint, and that will incur a issue. There's already a sprint with these dates, so you cannot create this sprint as it is. How do you incorporate this? How do you solve this? Well, you need to update the date, and let's do that for February, the end of February. If I click on done now, that bar is gone, and I can click on the X sign and we're good to go. So it's strange to see that the value sprint 1 is here and sprint 2 is there, and we don't have a move option anymore. So let's click on, no, we can rename them, we can delete them, but we cannot move them, just like we did with the rest of the board views. So as this is still a very early version of the sprints, I can see that that will change in the future when the project team is maturing this functionality. So getting back to the grid view, another thing that I wanted to look at is copy project. Now remember, at the start of this video we talked about templates. There's default templates, and that's all you can do currently with templates. The alternative is creating a nice project, such as our number 6 project. If I want to keep this number 6 type of project, I can copy it and give it a name such as number 7. So let's do that right now. On the far right, I see copy project as an option. If I click on copy project, it copies everything except assign people. It does not create a new Microsoft 365 group, and it doesn't populate the progress. It does, however, copy the effort, it copies the bucket names, and it copies our label values. So we can still see that this is label, this is a pink label, and we also have super blue. That kind of information is retained, and here it says that it's a copy, but now we can just simply call this post number 100 and number 7. Number 7 is our new project. So this is now a completely new project that we can add to our team. Now, it does not say that we have a team yet, because there's no one assigned to it, and it's not a part of that Microsoft 365 group that we had earlier. This is the ideal moment for us to talk about resources. Resources within Project for the Web are almost always connected with a Microsoft account, with a user, a real user. That's why if we assign a user, we can find everyone within the organization, such as Miriam. There's 2 options. Either you add a person to the group, and that person is going to be able to interact with your project, or you add that person as a resource, just assign. So let's assign Miriam to it as just an assignment. Now this project has Miriam as a resource, but this project is not shared with Miriam. Just like I can add Wendy. And again, it's just assigning that resource. The first time around, it asks you, do you want to add resources to a team? The second time around, it just assumes that you only want to assign resources to it. So that can be a difficult thing if you want to give the half of the people access to the project and the other half not. I have not worked that out, how to work with that kind of scenario. As soon as we have these 2 resources in here, we can navigate to the far right and we can create a new group for Project for the Web, for this project specifically. Now I can do that, and I can even add more resources such as Louisa, and I can create the group. Now I have a group with two resources, and that's Erika and Louise. We also have Miriam and Wendy in here. These people can view the project or their assigned tasks to share the project with them as a group owner, to add them to the group. So these people will only be able to work with their own assignments if they're added to the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 group. So that's the solution of the question that I had earlier. That's also the way how you can deselect or demote your users, removing them from the Office 365 group. Now there's an additional thing that you need to be aware of. We have licensing differences. If a person is added to the project or assigned to the project, they won't be able to interact with the tool. If they have a Office E3 or E5 license, they will be able to interact with some parts of the tool. They will be able to upgrade the percentage complete of their task. They can see their task in the grid and the board view, but not the timeline view. Now, if they have a P3 or P5 project license, they are able to do everything within your project. If you're the project manager, be aware of this. They can do everything within your project. If you don't want that, there is a way to code your way out of that. I'll put a link in the show notes, but it is something tricky and it is something that your IT support needs to help you out with. So now we have 2 people within our project that are actually users of the project, and we have 2 normal resources. We can add another task to Louise now, for instance, and we can add a task to Erik, and we can add a task to everyone. And now we have the whole team in here. We can see that it has the most amount of hours. Be aware, we don't have a way to differentiate the amount of effort that will be done by individual resources. That currently is not available in the tool. I hope it's coming in a future update. I do think it would be wise to have that, because it just makes sense, right? You not need to know who's doing the heavy lifting and who is managing or helping out just for specific pieces of the work. So now that we have all resources populated and all tasks populated, I can have a first look at this new view called People. It has been added since the November update, and it was presented at the Ignite sessions as well. And here you see what is available. So we see the different resources, we see the amount of tasks that they have, and we see that it is perfectly balanced. Very nice. So let's screw that up a bit. Additional task for Erik. And here you see that Erik is doing the most lifting compared to the rest of the team. And if we add an additional task, and you can see that Erik is doing the most amount of work to do. Now there's another set of things here. Things to do. What is this? Things to do, doing now. Oh, this is my board view. Remember, things to do, doing now, unit testing, milestones. That is inside our people view. That is nice. So if you want to have that in a correct bucket, we can say, okay, doing now, and things to do should be doing now. And I have that in a new bucket. Very nice. I can see that from the whole team, Erik is doing the most amount of tasks. Now, tasks might not tell you everything. You would also be interested in work. Yes, we can. There is a view option that shows you the hours. Compact mode, hidden completed tasks. Sure, yeah, makes sense. What is compact mode? Oh, if you remove compact mode, you get more information on your task. Very nice. Oh, I like it. That's good. Okay, so instead of numbers of tasks, you would be more interested in the amount of work. And now you see that even though Erik was doing the most amount of tasks by far, the work amount is still pretty much evenly distributed. Miriam is doing 2 tasks, but she's doing 300 hours in those 2 tasks. Wendy and Louise, both. The view options, we can look at hours, we can look at numbers of tasks, which doesn't make much sense to me. We can look at the compact mode, or we can have a hidden completed tasks or non-completed tasks. And now we have the completed amount of hours in here as well. Interesting. Hide completed tasks on people summary cards. Okay, so this is called a people summary card. You can say incompleted. What happens if we say that a task is being worked on? So let's say that this task is done for 25%. It's the one that everyone is doing, so that's interesting. Let's see if the completed, here we go. So with completing 25% of the task that everyone is working on, I can see that there's a green bar showing up on these tasks. Now, I remember that this task was here doing now. And if I mark this as complete, get that little ping, it drops down to the bottom because we already have that done, and we see that it's completed. Now, what happens with the late tasks or late hours? that shows up as soon as you have the finish date earlier than the day of today. So let's move that to the 9th of December. We are late, and let's add this task. Now you see that 8 hours late. Well, let's make this a task not of 1 day duration, but of 4 weeks duration. Because we set the finish date, you can see that the start date moves more to the past. So it's somewhat of a backwards scheduling kind of task. Now you see that the 3 colors that you have available here, we're doing something, we haven't been doing something, we're incomplete, and we have done 72 hours as well. Now, this is a very nice little view. Be aware that currently these assignments are only local to this project. We don't have a view that tells us about all the resource allocations outside of this project. To make this an enterprise solution, of course, we want to see what Eric is doing across the board, but that is something that needs some further tweaking before that can be done. How would it, for instance, work with different named tenants? How would it use the user? There's a lot of complexity there to take account of. Maybe the team is already working on it. I certainly hope so. And this is, for now, an excellent start of a people view and how busy are people. I can move tasks like this one. I can move that across so that Louise is doing some more work, or I can over allocate Miriam. But we don't know if this is an over allocation. We don't have a view available to us where we can say, okay, well, Miriam is over allocated. She cannot do the work anymore. She has a lot of work to do, but we don't know if it's an over allocation. With some more information, with completed tasks, with everything in the system now, we can have a look at the charts. And in the charts, we can see the task status. How many tasks do we have that are late? How many are completed? How many are not started? How many are in progress? This is, of course, a very nice overview, which tells you a brief moment of your status of the project. Now, one final thing that I do want to present is how do we change the calendar, because that is something done through the resources themselves. So remember, at the beginning of the project and the beginning of the video, we had a calendar here, and we have basic calendars, and we have alternate calendar and MPUG example calendar. These calendars need to be created from the Power Apps interface. So let's navigate to that. And if we click on project here, you'll see the project accelerator. So we have our projects here, and we can see project number 5, which was created in the tenant of that solution. It does not show us the other projects that we've created. That is only available through our project home at the moment. So let's navigate to projects, and here we see resources. What we need to do is we need to create a resource that is the basis of a calendar. So let's create a calendar resource, which we can name as a generic resource, and it will have the GMT time zone. And now we have a work hours, and we can change the work hours for this resource, and we can say, okay, well, edit on Monday. So let's click on edit, and this and all following events. And let's say that our Friday is a non-working day anymore. So here we see that our Friday is now not a working day anymore. Good. If I close this and I go back to generic, I now have a resource called new calendar. I navigate to settings, and I navigate to my template, calendar templates. We have the default working template, and we can create a new one, which is the new calendar, and we need to base this on a calendar resource. So here we have that new calendar resource that we just created, and if I click on save, I can now use that new calendar in projects within the tenant of the project accelerator. So navigating to projects again, I can go to a project and I can go to my project 5. I can click on edit and I can go to tasks. But from here, I don't have the option to change anything of that project because that is now part of the summary. So in the summary, we have our calendar template and we can remove that. Of course, we need a calendar and we can add the new calendar that we had in the system. So in tasks, now we can have a look at the timeline and we can see that the bars here is just for 2 days and the bar here is for 3 days. So our Friday is no longer a working day in this calendar for this project. So I would have loved to add reports into this video as well, but seeing as I already take up a lot of your time already, so there's probably some things I've missed in this video. It is an ever increasing application and I do look forward to next year, 2023. This was the last video for me this year. It is video number 100. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, make a comment, share with everyone. Have a happy holiday season and I will see you next year.